Shalom, everyone. This is Deacon Travis with King James Bible University, and the topic of today's study is, Thy words were found, and I did eat them. Spiritually, we're going to find out what the word eat is, for we are not to be carnally minded, because that brings death. To be spiritually minded is life and peace. So he's speaking in a language which is in parables. We must go underneath the word to find out what the word is saying to us. So we're going to find out that the word eat, spiritually, what it means. Isaiah chapter 45, verse 22 and 23. Look unto me, and be ye saved, all the ends of the earth, for I am God, and there is none else. I have sworn by myself, the word is going out of my mouth in righteousness, and shall not return, that unto me every knee shall bow, every tongue shall swear. Matthew chapter 5, verse 6. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. 1 Corinthians 11:34. And if any man hunger, let him eat at home. So if any man hunger after righteousness, eat at home. For we shall be filled with that wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that comes from the word, because the word is going forth out of God's mouth in righteousness. So the word is righteousness, and we can't eat it, carnally speaking. We can't. So we have to learn what the word is saying to us spiritually. So the word is in righteousness. And if any man hunger after this righteousness, after the word, eat at home. Jeremiah chapter 15, verse 16. Thy words were found, and I did eat them. So the language don't change. He's speaking parables. The language he will never get out of. So it's always going to be here for us to diligently seek, and he will not change nor alter the word that is going forth out of his mouth. So we must learn the word after we have found it, after we diligently seek and study. So the words in this book, we must eat spiritually. We must learn of it. So that was a question that always came to my mind. How can I eat words? Well, I have to leave off the old man, off that flesh, and put on the new man, which is after the spirit, being in the image of God, learning his language. So eat spiritually, what it means is learn. And we're going to test that throughout this study. We're going to test that. Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 1 through 3. Moreover, he said unto me, Son of man, eat that thou findest. Eat this roll, and go speak unto the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he caused me to eat that roll. And he said unto me, Son of man, cause thy belly to eat, and fill thy bowels with this roll that I give thee. Then did I eat it, and it was in my mouth as honey for sweetness. So I have to eat what I find. I have to learn it, which thy words were found, and I did eat them. So this roll is speaking about something which we have to learn of, which this roll is speaking about of a book. So same with the words. When they are found, we have to learn of them. We have to eat them. Same thing with this book. The language does not change, so we have to eat this roll. Eat that thou findest. And we're going to see information about this roll right here in Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 9. Starting at verse 8. But thou, son of man, hear what I say unto thee. Be not thou rebellious like thy rebellious house. Open thy mouth and eat that I give thee. Eat that I give thee. was given to us right there in Ezekiel 3:3. This roll. This roll is of what? In verse 9, chapter 2. And when I looked, remember, and hand was sent unto me, and lo, a roll of a book was therein. So I have to eat this roll of a book. Carnally speaking, can't do that. Spiritually speaking, can do that all day. Revelation chapter 10, verse 9. So right here I have some colors. And I went unto the angel and said unto him, give me the little book. And he said unto me, take it and eat it up. And it shall make thy belly bitter, but it shall be in thy mouth sweet as honey. What's going to be in thy mouth sweet as honey after you eat it? The little book. Same thing with this roll of a book right there in Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 3. It's speaking about the same thing. It's going to be in thy mouth sweet as honey. Revelation chapter 10, verse 10. And I took the little book out of the angel's hand and ate it up. So he learned it up. He took it. He received it. He did not rebel against the word. He did not forsake it. He did not abandon it. He drew near unto it and he ate it up. So we have to learn this angel's food. We have to learn this meat. We have to eat it. Psalm 78:25. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. So the angels' food is talking about that meat, which is still talking about that doctrine, which we have to eat, which we have to learn. It's going to come from heaven. It's going to come from above, and we must learn of it. So God is a spirit. He's not going to teach us ever. He's going to send his messenger to do the work for him. The messenger is that angel that contains the little book, which we have to take out of the messenger's hand. Because we see in Ezekiel 2:9, that hand which was sent unto you is that hand that came from that messenger. Right there in Revelation 10:10. Out of the angel's hand, we must take the little book and learn it up. So man did eat angels' food. That meat, that doctrine, that bread. 2 Ezra chapter 1, verse 19. Then had I pity upon your mornings and gave you manna to eat. So you did eat angels' bread. That angel's bread is still talking about that angel's food. It don't change, which is that doctrine. That doctrine that came from above, that came from heaven, that bread. So you can also check in these Exodus chapter 16, verse 15 about this bread that descended from heaven. Wisdom of Solomon chapter 16, verse 20. Instead whereof thou feddest thy own people with angels' food, and didst send them from heaven bread prepared without their labor, able to content every man's delight and agreeing to every taste. So the angel's bread is that food we must learn of, which is the doctrine, which is the little book, which is the roll of a book. We must learn of it. So we still gonna eat spiritually what it means throughout this study, that it does mean learn. Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 19. My meat also which I gave thee, fine flour. So right here is not speaking about anything carnally. The meat is the fine flour, the pure doctrine that came from heaven, which is that bread. Just to show us all that meat and bread is still speaking about the same food we must learn of. Because after we go through these verses, we see that the language don't change and break. So the bread is the meat, which we see the food is the meat right there in Psalm 78:25. And the bread is what we learn of that came from heaven, that came from the angel, which it came through the angel. We just taking it out of his hand, out of his power. When the angel come to us, after we are diligently seeking the Most High, we must hearken not unto man, but the message which is inside of the envelope, which is inside that messenger. We must learn the words that comes forth through that messenger, not looking on the outer man appearance, but looking at the word that's contained inside of that man. Because the messenger is just the envelope, which have nothing to do with the message. God's business is God's business. He sends his word through these messengers, and we must hearken unto it and learn of it, spiritually speaking. So that meat is that fine flour right there in Ezekiel 16:19. The language don't break. So the Most High God, he fed us. He sent his word prepared without our labor, without the labor of the messenger. Proverbs chapter 31, verse 27. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and learneth not the bread of idleness. So she is speaking about the spirit of wisdom. The spirit of wisdom is what came from above, came from God. So she came down here to do the works of God, which she does not learneth the bread of idleness. The bread of idleness is speaking about the knowledge of those that are workers of iniquity. For to be idle is one that is a worker of iniquity, that does not work at all in the doctrine of Christ. The doctrine of Christ is what we're supposed to labor for, which is that meat, that fine flour, that pure doctrine. So when we learn of this word, we're going to learn it all in righteousness, because the word is in righteousness. So she is speaking about the spirit of wisdom, and we're going to check that. So she don't learn the knowledge of idleness. She don't mix herself with any other doctrine. That bread is doctrine. So right here in Proverbs 3:18, she still speaking about the same she in Proverbs 31:27 is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is every one that retaineth her. Sirach 19:19. The knowledge of the commandments of the Lord, the Creator, is the doctrine of life. She is a tree of life. So the tree of immortality is still speaking about that doctrine of life, which is wisdom. Wisdom is the doctrine. So it all contains the same word. It don't mix with any other doctrine. For we should not add nor diminish from the word, and we must learn the word when it comes to us, seeking and studying to show ourselves approved daily, diligently, unto death. Sirach 19:19. The knowledge of the commandments of the Lord is the doctrine of life, and they that do things that please him shall receive the fruit of the tree of immortality. The tree of immortality is speaking about the doctrine of life, which is wisdom. Wisdom is the doctrine. That's who she is. And we're going to find out that wisdom is she right here in Wisdom of Solomon 6 verse 22. As for wisdom, what she is, who is she? Wisdom. Wisdom is a tree of life. She learneth not the bread of idleness. And how she came up, I will tell you, it will not hide mysteries from you, but will seek her out from the beginning of her nativity and bring the knowledge of her into light. It will not pass over the truth. So, wisdom is pure. Wisdom is pure. Second Ezra chapter 8 verse 52. For unto you is a paradise open, the tree of life is planted, the time to come is prepared, plenteousness is made ready, a city is builded, and rest is allowed, yea, perfect goodness and wisdom. So the tree of life is speaking about wisdom. That's who she is. That's who her is, she. And we see that in Proverbs 3:18. She is a tree of life, the tree of immortality. She not subject to die. She would never die. So we must learn from this tree. We must learn from this tree. We must eat from this tree spiritually. So we learn in the language of the Most High God. And after we learn the language, we are storing inside of our storehouse. So it may be meat there. It may be doctrine, that fine flour, that pure doctrine, that pure knowledge, that bread that descended from heaven. And we see that right here in Genesis 2 and 9, jumping down to 16 and 17. And out of the ground made the Spirit of God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And the Spirit of God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely learn. Because you can't eat a tree that contains knowledge of good and evil. And we know that the tree of life is speaking about wisdom. So how can you eat wisdom? Or how can you eat a tree of knowledge of good and evil? You see, both of those is speaking about something that you can learn of, because wisdom you can learn of, that fine flour, that pure doctrine, that doctrine that descended from above, that heaven, and that bread you can, which is that doctrine, and that meat, you can learn of that. We just saw that all of that means doctrine. So the bread of idleness is speaking about the tree of knowledge of good and evil, those that are contrary unto the doctrine, because she learneth not the bread of idleness. So how can we eat, carnally speaking, of this tree, which is wisdom? How can we eat, carnally speaking, the tree of knowledge of good and evil? You can't. So eat equal learn spiritually. Verse 17, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not learn of it. For in the day that thou learnest thereof, thou shalt surely die. Because the tree of knowledge of good and evil is not the tree of life. If we learn of wisdom, we will receive and inherit the kingdom, which is life everlasting. So right here, eat equal learn. And we still going to test that throughout this study to find out, okay, does eat really equal learn spiritually? Genesis chapter 3, verse 1 through 5. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Spirit of God had made. And he said unto the woman, yea, has God said, you should not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat, we may learn of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you should not learn of it, neither shall you touch it lest you die. And the serpent said unto the woman, you should not surely die. For God does know that in the day you learn thereof, then your eyes shall be open, and you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Verse 6. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat, he did learn. So this tree she wanted to be a god, so she learned of it. It was pleasant to her understandings to make her wise. So spiritually, to become wise, we know that we have to learn of something. And carnally speaking, you can't eat of a tree that's going to make you wise. So this was in her own eyes that she wanted to be a god. So she learned of something which was commanded of her not to learn of, which is that tree of knowledge of good and evil. So she took of the tree and did eat. She did learn and gave to her husband also. So the tree of knowledge of good and evil is what the spirit of wisdom does not learn of. And we see that over here in Proverbs 31:27. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and learneth not the bread of idleness. So the bread of idleness is the knowledge of those that does not diligently seek out of the book. They are idle. They are not workers of all. They are workers of iniquity, though, but they are not workers at all in the doctrine of truth, in the doctrine of Christ. They are not studying to show themselves approved unto God, but they are those that are seeking to become wise in this world, to be looked at as gods, and to see themselves as wise as comparing themselves unto God. But it's only one God. We see that in Isaiah chapter 45, where it says, "Look unto me, and be ye saved, all the ends of the earth, for I am God, and there is none else." So it's only one God. He has sworn by himself. So we cannot desire to be as we are God, because there's only one. So there's little gods, little g's rolling around, in which we are not to be as, because that is not what we are here for. We are here to just be followers of Christ, seeking the kingdom. First Timothy chapter 5, verse 13. "And withal they learn to be idle." Exactly the point. To be idle, you have to learn of, which she does not eat of the bread of idleness. We just left it right here in Proverbs chapter 31:27. The bread of idleness she don't eat, which is the tree of life. She, the tree of life, does not learn of the bread of idleness. So withal, they learn to be idle. Who? The woman with her husband. They took of that tree and did eat. They learned. So spiritually, eat equal learn. That's a behavior in which we were instructed from the beginning to not eat that tree, to not learn of it. That tree of workers of iniquity. So that serpent within that garden is that man, which is that tree of knowledge of good and of evil. So the messenger that was also in the garden that we were supposed to learn of contained that bread, that food which we are to learn of, which is the doctrine, that meat. And we see that over here. Revelation chapter 10, verse 9 and 10. That little book is the food in which we gonna learn of. The messenger food is that meat right there in Psalm 78:25, which is the book, the doctrine. That bread in 2 Ezra chapter 1:19 is that food we supposed to learn of. doctrine that came from heaven, prepared without our labor, right here in Wisdom of Solomon 16 and 20, which you can also check Exodus chapter 16, verse 15. You could check that out. And then also we see that this meat is that fine flour, that pure doctrine. That's what we learn of. So that messenger, which is that tree in the garden, that's what we are supposed to learn of, which is going to be that elder or wise man. That elder or wise man is that tree in the garden, which is all not speaking about the flesh. It's speaking about what's contained inside of him, which is wisdom. Because wisdom is the tree of life, the tree of immortality, which is the doctrine contained inside of that elder, that wise man. So man being made in the image of God is going to emulate the characteristics, which is going to be showing wisdom and shining wisdom unto those that are seeking and inquiring after God to learn of who their maker is. So they learn to be idle, wandering about from house to house, right there in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 13. So when you're wandering from about house to house, you're not staying within the temple, eating at home. So if any man hunger, let him eat at home. We see that over here. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 34, not wander from house to house, learning to be idle. We must learn at home. We must stay within the temple, which we are the temple. We are not supposed to wander about from house to house, seeking this doctrine and that doctrine, going to this building made with hands, to that building made with hands. We're supposed to learn at home. If we hunger and thirst after righteousness, we shall be filled with that word, with that knowledge, with that wisdom, with that spiritual understanding, that spiritual meat. But they lied on the spirit. Within that garden, they lied on the spirit, and we're going to see that right here in Genesis chapter 3, verse 12. And the man said, the woman, which is that spirit whom God gave unto mankind, male and female. The man said, the woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat. So he lied right there. Right there he lied and said, the woman gave me of the tree, and I did learn. So that woman, which is that spirit of wisdom that God gave unto man, does not give anyone of the tree of knowledge and good and evil to learn of, because we just saw that in Proverbs chapter 31, verse 27, she learneth not the bread of idleness. So since she don't learn of the bread of idleness, she's not going to give to any of her household the bread of idleness to eat of, to learn of, which is the bread of those that are workers of iniquity. She's not going to do that. So he lied on the spirit and said that she gave him the bread in which he was not supposed to learn of, which is of that tree of knowledge and good and evil. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 23. And thou shalt eat, learn in the presence of the Spirit of thy God, in the place which he shall choose to place his way there, the tithe of thy corn, and of thy wine, and of thine oil, and the firstlings of the herds, and of thy flocks, that thou mayest learn to desire the Spirit of thy God always. So we must eat in the place of which God placed his way there, which he placed his way there in the midst of this tree, all of the trees containing the word, which is these elders and wise men. He placed his way there. He did not place his way in the tree of knowledge and good and evil, because he told us, in the day that thou eat and learn thereof, thou shalt surely die. So he does not desire us to die. We, on the other hand, we enjoy all of that. We enjoy death. We enjoy being plagued with curses. We enjoy that. We enjoy lying on the Spirit, committing blasphemy against the Spirit. We enjoy that. Eat spiritually means learn. And we see that all throughout this study, that if we learn in the presence of where God placed his way there, the tithe of thy corn, of thy wine, and of thine oil, this is all spiritual. So I do not know what that means spiritually, which I see right after the semicolon is going to tell us, even though that's the full thought, that thou mayest learn to desire the Spirit of thy God always. Eat spiritually mean learn. Isaiah chapter 29, verse 11 and 12. And the vision of all is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one that is learned, saying, read this, I pray thee. And he said, I cannot, for it is sealed. And the book is delivered to him that is not learned, saying, read this, I pray thee. And he said, I am not learned. So one is learned and one is not learned from the words of the book. So one did eat and one did not eat. The words of a book, we must eat them. And we see that over here in Jeremiah chapter 15 and verse 16. Thy words were found and I did eat them. I did learn them. One did not learn and one did learn. One learned the bread of idleness. One did learn of the tree of life, the word of righteousness. We must learn the word, rightly dividing it. Romans chapter 16, verse 17. Now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine which you have learned, which you ate, and avoid them. So unlike the woman in the garden, she did not avoid those that caused divisions, those that were subtle, those that were in the garden, of which is speaking that split-tongue doctrine, the doctrine of which we are not supposed to learn of, because it shows that they think they know what they're speaking about, but they don't. So those that are speaking contrary offenses, we have to avoid them. The woman sat there in the garden and spoke with the serpent instead of using the language and the words that was once given unto her, but she did not hearken unto the voice of the Lord, but rebelled.